Es geht weiter mit der Next Economy Open. Jetzt haben wir eine englischsprachige Session, ich glaube mit einer ehemaligen Studentin von dir, Lutz, und du machst die Vorstellung.
Okay, great. Bridget, it's great to have you here on our show and welcome back. I have met Bridget, I think 2 years ago first met her 2 years ago. And I was very impressed. She's a young mother, has two children, and she managed to come to Germany for her master's degree in digital management. And we had several discussions about her master thesis. Then she had the idea to write about the decolonialization of the energy system in Zambia. And so we will have a very interesting view into Africa, into the specific situation there. And Bridget will introduce herself, and I'm looking forward to what you are showing to us.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Becker. So my name is Bridget Mabharani. Originally, I'm from Zimbabwe, but I'm currently staying in Zambia since 2018. So I went to Germany to study for my digital management master's at Hochschule Fresenius. Like you say, that's where I met you. And that's where my zeal for the environment started. That's why I had to take this thesis, which was entitled "Decolonization of Energy Systems in Zambia." Yes, so I can just dive into my presentation. Okay. So this is the
probably you can switch to the presentation mode.
Yes, please.
Yes.
So the findings that I'm going to talk about today, they come from my master's thesis only. So this is not a representation of everything, but it is from the findings that I got from my thesis. So first of all, about Zambia, you might be wondering where Zambia is. This is the world map here where you see the red pin. That's where Zambia is. It has physical boundaries with countries like Zimbabwe, Botswana, Malawi, Tanzania, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Mozambique, and also Namibia. So it is a landlocked country. We don't have sea here. So first of all, I would like to talk about decolonization. You might be wondering what really decolonization of energy is. So basically, it's a way of transitioning from the colonial era energy systems to the modern day energy systems. So it's mostly shifting from a reliance of resource extraction, whereby we would exploit the forest, would exploit the ground in order to get energy. And we are trying to move towards the cleaner and greener forms of energy. So in a nutshell, it's about empowering the local community so that they can shape how they want their energy to be for themselves and for the generations to come. So it's all about sustainability. It's about sustainable environmental practices. And it's also about reducing carbon emissions, reducing all types of gases that are damaging the ozone layer. And there's an increased energy independence and self-sufficiency in decolonization of energy when you talk about decolonization. And through that, there's also mostly job creation, which is what we are all about, like right here in Southern Africa. We are trying to create jobs for ourselves. We are trying to create jobs for the future generations, And we are also trying to save a lot of energy so that what we have today will be able to sustain the future generations. And there has been a lot of political power imbalances in terms of historical economies. So those are what we are trying to correct when we are decolonizing energy. So now, the background, what led me to research this topic? What's the importance of this topic of decolonization in terms of Zambia? So Zambia is facing some energy challenges recently. So for instance, in 2022, November, the ZESCO, which is the Zambia Electric Supply Company. It's the only company in Zambia that supplies energy to everyone. It announced that there was going to be, it started as a 4-hour blackout, what we call load shedding. So what that means is that a certain area has power cuts for 4 hours, 4 continuous hours. And then after those 4 hours, the power cut switches off to another area. So that was what was happening. So it switched off from 4 hours, it went up to 6 hours, and then it went up to 12 hours, which meant that from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m., a certain area did not have electricity. So this is one of the things that led me to research this topic. And also here we have a heavy reliance of non-renewable energies like charcoal. You see the picture in the corner there. So that's charcoal. To those who don't know, charcoal is made from burning trees. So if you burn trees, really hard wood trees, you burn really hard wood trees, you get that black residue. And then if you want to cook, you have to light up fire into the charcoal and you cook. And then you throw it away, you do the same. So there's actually a heavy reliance of on charcoal here in Zambia. And then the frequent power shortages that I talked about, what we call load shedding here. And then in rural areas, like we don't have power infrastructure for energy, for electricity. And the government has been working like really hard in order to make everyone have access to electricity. And then we have been having some environmental and health impacts, which I will talk about in detail, like in the coming slides. And then I also realized that there's actually there's actually a significant potential for solar and wind energy. So from January up to December, we have the sun. We have the sun in abundance. Like right now, it's 30-something degrees Celsius. It's very hot. So we have the sun from January until December. And if we can harness that, if we are able to harness that into electricity, it's something that is very doable and it's very sustainable here. And also wind, we have a constant supply of wind, especially in July, from July until September. So August, we call it the month of wind. We have very heavy winds that we experience in August. So if we are able to harness that wind into electricity, that is something that is very sustainable and is good for the environment as well. So even though we have the potential to harness solar and wind, it's only providing 10% of electricity generation. So you see, there's a lot of potential. The 90% still remains untapped. So if we could tap into the 90% and produce that, work onto that to produce energy, to produce electricity from that, that would be very sustainable for us. So as I mentioned earlier, I said a lot of people use charcoal, but here it states that over 75% of households, they still use charcoal for cooking. So you can imagine what that means. It means a lot of trees have to be cut down, a lot of trees have to be burnt in order to produce this charcoal, which we would then use for cooking. So this is the background. This is what led me to research this topic. And then the aim of this presentation, I want to analyze with you how we can decolonize and transition to renewable energies, and then why there's some late transition. What is hindering people from adopting this good energy, the green energy, renewable energy, and then the policies that can be put in place in order to support the transition from the old type of energies into the renewable energies. And I also want you to understand how renewable energies can enable sustainable and equitable energy access, like in Zambia as a whole. So I'll start with the energies that we have, the 10% that I talked about. We have solar power. So people are slowly transitioning to solar power. Hydro has been there since long back. It's actually the main source of energy. So we have Kariba Dam, we have Zambia's river. It's the main source of hydroelectricity. And then wind energy, it's just starting. It has started, although, but still a lot of people do not use this. Geothermal, we have some hot springs here where we are able to extract geothermal energy. Although it's something that is actually new that a lot of people do not implement, do not know about, but it's something that is possible to do here. And then biomass, whereby we are talking of making biodigesters, etc. And liquefied petroleum gas has become very common in the last few years. So every household has a portable LP gas container. Okay, I can show you mine here. So this is a portable liquefied petroleum gas container. So we use it as backup. So if there is no electricity, if there's no electricity supply, we connect the gas tank to the stove, so we are able to cook. So that is LP gas. So from my research, I asked a lot of people from different sectors, from the agricultural sector, banking sector, like literally everyone, how shifting to these types of energy, to the green type of energy, to the renewable energy has impacted them. So I have listed the impacts that have been done into three. We have economic impact, social impact, and environmental impact. So I will talk first about the economic impact. So the company said when they shifted to green energy, when they shifted to sustainable energy, they were able to meet customer demands more effectively. You remember what I said about power cuts, the what we call load shedding here. So if you are load shedded for 6 hours, what it means is the company is not producing for those 6 hours. The company is stagnant. So if that company now switches on to solar energy, what it means is that instead of being redundant, instead of just sitting, they are now able to produce, and they can meet their customer demands more effectively. And also that same company, compared to the one which is just waiting for power to be switched back, this company is able to be competitive and is able to make sales and have a financial sustainability for itself. Also, we cannot mention how this reduces costs, like lower variable costs. When we're talking solar, we don't pay anything. It's just installation costs. So the main costs are mainly when installing, where you need to buy the power pack and everything, and you install. Then after that, you enjoy the lower variable cost compared to someone who is paying every time they're using power, they're using hydroelectricity power. So going back to the first point where we said the companies are now able to meet consumer demand more effectively, it also means they have shorter lead times, which enables them to increase volumes of production. So some companies, they take into account power cuts. So they say, we could do this order in 1 week, but because of power cuts, we can just give you a time frame of 2 weeks. But a company that switched to alternative energy, a company that switched to renewable energy, if they're using, for instance, solar power, which is common here, if they're using solar power, what it means is instead of giving a customer 2 weeks waiting time, they can just work with 1 week. And it simply means that they're able to produce many products in that specific time compared to someone who's just waiting for the mainframe power. So this in turn, it stimulates economic growth in communities, and not just in communities, but in the country as a whole. So these are the main economic benefits that companies and communities have been harvesting from switching from traditional modes of energy into new modes of energy, so which is what we call decolonization. And then the environmental impacts. So it is important to note that, as I mentioned earlier, that charcoal is produced by cutting trees. When we cut trees, we burn them, that's when we get charcoal. So according to the it's called the Global Forest Watch. So according to the Global Forest Watch, in 2022 only, Zambia lost 179,000 hectares of tree cover. So imagine 179,000 hectares of tree cover. This equals to 69.8 metric tons of carbon dioxide emission. So Zambia only lost 179,000 hectares of tree cover. So you can imagine how this impacts the environment. It means that now we don't have a clean source of energy, a clean source of air. It means that it produces a lot of diseases. So by switching now from the traditional methods, from the charcoal to newer energy, we mean that there are going to be some benefits in terms of conservation. We are going to conserve our trees now. We are going to conserve our forests. And there is also biodiversity and carbon sequestration. So when you say carbon sequestration, so it's a natural process whereby carbon dioxide is removed from the atmosphere and is held in solid or liquid form. So it can be done artificially, but here we are talking about natural because we have trees, we have managed to conserve the forest, we have managed to conserve the trees. Now we are able to have natural carbon sequestration. And also this decolonization of energy has contributed to reducing Zambia's carbon footprint and positively impacting the climate. And also decreased reliance on charcoal. I know we still have larger numbers, but they're decreasing. As we said, it's now 75, but it used to be 100. So at least now the figures are reducing year in, year out. We are expecting to see very good numbers. So this shift, this transition has led to decreased reliance on charcoal, which has led to improved indoor and outdoor quality. You know, we don't experience very cold winters here, but our winters are between 15 degrees and 23 degrees Celsius. But for us, it's very cold. So you see people, they use charcoal indoor. They light their charcoal stoves, they put inside, they close the windows. So in winter, we always have issues of people who are carried to the hospital unconscious. Because when you close the door now, when you close the doors, you close the windows, there is no oxygen coming in. So we always have these cases in some extremes. Some people actually die from suffocation, from the inhalation of these gases produced by the use of charcoal. So you can see how bad it is. So that's how bad it is indoors. And then outdoors, when there are trees being bent there, you can actually smell it. You can feel it in the air. You see some particles everywhere. So that has been reduced, and we think that is going to actually drastically reduce in future. So which will in turn reduce the deforestation rates for charcoal production because people will be using alternative energy sources. So for social impacts, I realized from the research that people now, they have more time for productive activities, mainly agricultural activities. So people who extract this charcoal, mainly they're in the rural areas because that's where abundant trees are, that's where dense forests are found. So these people, they spend time like for a 60 centimeter circumference tree. Because in the rural areas, they don't have electric tree cutters, they use handheld axes. So you see, one person can spend 4 hours trying to cut down a tree. So imagine now, because the people are gradually switching to other sources of energy, that person, instead of spending 4 hours trying to cut down one tree, he can spend those 4 hours like being productive in the field and producing food. So this has indirectly led to an increase in food security for the whole country, for families in small scale, and then for the whole country at large. And also some benefits in terms of education. So in remote areas, children have to walk about 4 or 5 kilometers one way to school, 4 or 5 kilometers one way back. So what it means is when they knock off from school, they walk until they reach home, it will be dark. So when it's dark, they have to study, and they don't have electricity, they don't have power, they do not have lights. So traditionally, it was a hindrance in terms of education. But when people realize that they can now use, even if they are not on the grid for hydroelectricity power for the government infrastructure, they can actually buy solar panels and use that instead for lighting. So there's been an increase in terms of literacy rate. There's been an increase in terms of pass rates in those remote areas, because once children reach home, they can now switch on their solar lights and they can use that to study. Also, some health improvements, because we know that smoke inhalation, it causes some illnesses, tuberculosis, some liver cirrhosis, and all that smoke-related illnesses, especially to do with lungs. So when people shift, when they transition from the traditional power sources, they transition into the more cleaner power sources. What it means is that even their health improves. So these are the indirect positive benefits that we are yielding. We know sometimes it might be difficult to trace them back to the decolonization of energy, but those are some of the advantages, some of the benefits that we are yielding as a country. And I mentioned on number one that people are spending more time doing agricultural activities. Here I'm also talking about, instead of gathering firewood and doing what, people are now spending their time doing other things productive, and people are even signing up to do some special courses, some special trade skills, so that they can be able to also help develop the economy. And there's been an enhanced quality of life and empowerment for rural communities, like what they never thought was possible. People can now gather around the table and then they can eat their food like with light instead of eating in the darkness. So those little things are what's bringing families together. To think that we can actually trace the bringing of families together to decolonization of energy, it's something that that seems bizarre, but it is really what is happening here. And then, so you might think that, okay, if there are a lot of benefits in switching to green energy, in switching to renewable energy, why isn't everyone switching? Because there are a lot of advantages that can be derived. So the thing is, we have barriers. We have things that are inhibiting societies, things that are inhibiting communities, companies to switch to renewable energy. For instance, the high upfront costs in installing, in purchasing and installing. I would take solar, for example. So to power a simple household, you need 5 kV solar panels and batteries. So that system, it costs around 3,800 euros just for a setup. So on average here, on average, people earn around 400 to 500 euros. That's the basic salaries. We are not talking about the higher earners or the lower earners, but 400 euros, that's what someone is earning. And we are expecting that person to purchase a solar system which goes for 3,800 euros. So sometimes people, they really want to do this, they really want to switch from traditional methods, but they cannot, because they cannot afford this. So this is one of the main barriers that we are facing here. And then there's also a lack of education and awareness about the long-term benefits. So probably someone has the funds, someone has the money, they want to switch, but they actually don't understand what the benefits are. Someone says, okay, I can just wait for 6 hours until the main power company switches back power. Okay, but you have the money and you can easily switch to another source of power. But because that person lacks education, he or she doesn't understand the benefits, the long-term benefits that can be derived from decolonization of the energy, from the switching from charcoal or from hydroelectric power to other sources of clean energy, because they don't know about that. So now that's another barrier that we are facing. And also we have entrenched economic structures that favor non-renewable sources. So, you know what you have in Europe or in other countries, whereby every household has a pipe that supplies gas. So here we do not have that. So it's something that is embedded in our infrastructure. So we cannot say now we are thinking of switching to using gas instead of charcoal, because we can do that in small scales. We can just buy those portable gas containers. We can use biogas and stuff, but we cannot use gas on a larger scale like what you guys do in your countries, because we do not have the favorable infrastructure, the favorable structures for that. So that is another barrier. And also, there's always a resistance to change. You know, in everything, someone knows the benefits of switching, and they actually know that it's good for them, it's good for the environment, good for the company, but they're just resistant. So that's also one of the other barriers that we are facing here. And then the facilitators, what do we think can facilitate the adoption of green energy, of renewable energy? What can facilitate the decolonization of energy, the moving from that era where we'll be using the energy that pollutes the environment to the cleaner energy? So what can facilitate this? So from the research, I found that people are advocating for local capacity building and technical training programs. So this will flush out the where we said people lack knowledge. So if we build capacity and we train people on the benefits, on how we actually train people on the technicalities. We train people how to make solar panels. We train people how to make windmills, how to connect those and stuff. If we do that, we think this will facilitate the transition to green and cleaner energy. And also public awareness campaigns on renewable energy benefits, because we say that people do not know, they do not understand the benefits that are derived from transitioning to cleaner energy. So if we plan these awarenesses, the public awarenesses, whereby we address communities, we address leaders of companies, we address everyone that we think is influential stakeholders in the community in this transition. If we address those people, we will bring to them the awareness, the advantages that the transition brings about. If we do that, we think this will facilitate the decolonization of energy. And we also think that the government has a role to play, whereby they can reduce or totally eliminate some tax incentives. So we'll talk about import tariffs, whereby they might say if you are importing solar panels, if you are importing things that are used to make a windmill or stuff, you may be given a tax holiday, you are given a free pass, you don't pay tax for that. So if the government does that, what it means is the cost that we were talking about, the setup cost, they will decrease. So if the costs decrease, people might actually choose to switch to the greener and green energy, to sustainable energy. And we also think in as much as just giving people is really not good, because sometimes you teach them laziness, but we think there might be some financing options and green energy funds that can be made available to people, because some people, they don't afford to buy this at one go, but they say probably if I'm given 2 years, I might be able to save towards buying this system that is able to sustain the family one if there's load shedding, there are power cuts. So what can happen is there might be some organizations that can set up these financing options. They say, okay, we have funds available, but only if you want to switch to clean energy, if you want to switch to renewable energy, we can provide you with some financing options. You borrow money, you pay it over a period of 1 year or 2 years. So if that is done, and if it's done correctly, I believe that it facilitates the switching, the transitioning to clean energy. And also a multi-stakeholder collaboration and partnerships. This means that we don't have to only look to the government, because that's what people do, that's what citizens do. They just say, what is the government doing for us? But we need to come up with partnerships. We say the government, the private sector, the communities, the non-governmental organizations, everyone can come together and they collaborate, they form partnerships. This brings together people from different backgrounds, from different industries. It can be a facilitator because it helps everyone to see things differently from the other person's perspective, and they might be willing to then switch to renewable energy sources. So factors for consideration. So when we are talking about this, just switching, decolonizing, going for greener energy, going for clean energy, we also have things that we need to consider, and the community is at the heart of this. So if we want to do this, and if we want to do it correctly, we have to make sure that we consider the community. So I'm going to talk about promoting local knowledge and practices. So it's important that we incorporate traditional knowledge systems and indigenous technologies. For instance, there's this company locally that I've been reading about. They're called Virgin Green Energy. So what they do is they make charcoal pieces, the charcoal that I've been talking about, but they don't burn down trees. They make the charcoal pieces from biomass. So what it means is traditionally people, they like charcoal because they grew up in a system where they were using charcoal. So now instead of using the charcoal that is gotten from burning down trees, they are now using this type of charcoal that is made from biomass. So we are trying to incorporate our culture, our values, the traditional knowledge that we have with the modern technologies, so that we move together towards green and cleaner energy. And we also have to ensure that the transition aligns with cultural values and needs. So every community, they have their own values, they have what they believe. So it's important to go to an area, you try to understand what the community wants, and you don't impose on them. You give them knowledge, and then you also get context-specific approaches which are grounded in local wisdom. So that's when we are talking about approaching the traditional leaders in a land. You ask them, what do they think about using the sun as their type of energy? What do they think of harnessing wind? If they have some reservations about that, you try to nurture them, you try to teach them, and they have to make that decision for themselves eventually. So that is what we are talking about. You don't just have to say, okay, from now on, everyone is using renewable energy. It's something that we have to try to approach the people. We get the local wisdom, their culture and their tradition, and then we encourage people. And then I'll talk about social justice. So it's amazing how even when we're talking about decolonizing energy, there is also a talk about social justice. So there's the equitable distribution of benefits and risks. So we have seen in some areas whereby there's a large area where they have solar panels, which powers the whole community. Because here, normally, when we're talking about solar energy, solar panel, we are talking about a household. Like each household, they go and buy their 2 or 3 solar panels, they buy their battery, they install their system. But there's also a possibility whereby a community, they can come together, they have solar panels that powers the whole community. And then what is important now is to make sure that everyone derives the same benefits and risks. So that's where community comes in now. And also ensuring affordable access to clean energy. If we do that, we make sure that everyone has access to clean energy, and we also include communities that are marginalized in decision-making. Because sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, people, they want to be involved. They want to know what they're getting themselves into. So if you involve communities, if you involve people in decision-making, we would derive maximum benefits from this. And we also want to avoid a situation whereby we will have the same neo-colonial dynamics. So we try to safeguard a national interest in trade agreements. For instance, you might have some companies from somewhere else, they say, okay, we want to invest in your country. We want to give you these things which you want in order to have green energy, in order to have renewable energy. But at the same time, we want to maintain our sovereignty as a nation. We want to maintain that which gives us which keeps our national interest at heart of these trade agreements. So it's important. And then the regulating of foreign investments. So some countries, some companies, they bring in a foreign direct investment. They invest. What they do is that they pollute the environment. They invest, they pollute the environment, and after doing that, they also plow back their profits back to their countries. So that's what we want to avoid here by including the communities. We want to improve, we want to promote foreign direct investment, but at the same time, promoting inclusive growth, whereby companies, they come here, they operate, they also improve, or probably they contribute to the afforestation, like to the planting of trees, conservation of forests and such. So they are not only responsible for destroying the environment, for polluting the environment, but at the same time, they are also responsible for growing the trees that will give us oxygen. And also, we need to retain local control over energy resources. So we don't want a situation whereby there is only one company which is offering, which is producing energy for the whole country, and that company is not even Zambian. Probably it's a company from overseas, where they can say, okay, today we are halting our operations, we are stopping. They don't look at the implications that can have to Zambia as a country. So that is what we want to avoid, according to the research. So what it actually means is we want to retain our energy democracy, in as much as we want assistance, in as much as we want opinions, we want to import machinery that is going to help us. At the end, we need to retain our energy democracy. So participatory decision-making and public deliberation, not just in remote areas where I mentioned earlier. This is we are now taking it to a larger scale, whereby we involve decision makers, our members of parliament, we involve our governors, our ministers, everyone participates from the grassroots level until the highest level. Everyone knows what they're doing in terms of decision making. And we also decentralize community-led energy solutions. Like I mentioned earlier, whereby, for instance, where a community can have their source of energy, they can have one power plant, one solar power plant, and they can use that solar power plant for the benefit of the whole community. So this is what we're talking about, decentralization of energy. And then challenging the concentration of power over energy systems. So as I mentioned, in rural areas, in some remote areas, currently they are not yet connected on the power grid. So this is what we have to challenge. We have to see how we can include everyone, how we can involve everyone, so that everyone at the end of the day has access to power and energy systems. So the government efforts. So sorry, I have to go back. Government efforts. Whatever I was talking about, mainly I was focusing on the community. I was focusing on industries. I was focusing on how each and every one of Zambians, of the Zambian community, is trying to do, on what everyone is trying to do in order to help in the decolonization. But we also see that the government is not just idle. They're really trying, they're doing their best in order to reach the targets that they have. So the energy policy in Zambia, it says by 2030, there has to be an increase substantially in terms of a share of renewable energy in the global energy mix. So the target is meeting 30% of Zambia's energy needs with renewable energy. So if you remember from the first slide where I said currently charcoal is providing 75% of energy in Zambia. So we are moving towards a situation whereby we want 30% of the energy that we'll be using by 2030 has to be renewable energy. So this is the government's commitment, but we know the government cannot do it by itself. That's why I said we need all stakeholder approach, everyone, every hand on deck, whereby we'll be having the private sector, we'll be having the non-governmental organizations, we'll be having individuals totally committed to meeting this 30% target, which has been set by the government. And recently in the budget presentation, which was presented by the Minister of Finance, they said they eliminated import tax on electric vehicles. So if you want to import, currently we are not making here in Zambia, but there has been some talks of companies opening here in order to make these electric vehicles. But for the meantime, if you want to import your electric vehicle, what it means is that you are not going to pay import tax. So this is going to be done tax-free. At the end of the day, this will promote switching from using cars that pollute the environment, the diesel cars and stuff, and switching to cleaner types of vehicles, the electric vehicles. So that is all that I had for you. I don't know if there are any questions or any contributions.
So first of all, many thanks, Bridget. This was a very interesting overview, and we see there are so many effects involved, and so there will be hopefully will be a boost in productivity and productivity aspects we do not know in Germany actually, yeah, and the literacy issue, for example, is highly interesting for me, and of course health, yeah, and of course, yeah, a good life for many people, yeah, that should be the goal everywhere in the world, and so there might be some hope that you have some kind of leapfrog transition, yeah, from the old structures to post-fossil age, yeah, and I think this is very, very interesting for me, and it's also obvious that this is not easygoing. There are so many aspects involved, and what you said, all hands on deck, and all stakeholders involved, or whatever you may say. It's really important. But let me have another aspect. So Africa is a fast-growing continent. Yeah. So the reproduction rates are far higher than in Europe or Asia or the US, for example. And for example, when we see this Africa as a whole, then from our German point of view, then we will have less reasons for migration. Yeah. And we see that migration is a huge challenge for it's a complex issue. Yeah. So we see that, for example, local communities get really problems with the sheer number, because compared to Africa, Europe is a very small country. We see people stranded. Yeah. So, and it's again, it's a multiplex issue, and so, but there are so many opportunities. Yeah. And for your country, and even maybe in the next step for also other countries that invest in Zambia. And I think this is a really interesting challenge, and I hope that the investment will be social investments and environmentally friendly investment, because still Africa is the lung of the world. And it's also important. Gunnar.
We have two questions from the net. How could Germany better promote these developments in your country? And the second, what would you like to see from the climate conference in Dubai?
Okay, I'll start with the first one. I think Germany being a leader in terms of renewable energy, in terms of green energy, they could provide just information. Like I said, we sometimes we lack education, we lack the knowledge on how we can switch from the fossil energy to the cleaner energy. So in terms of Germany, even without any financial assistance, what they could just do is provide education. If they provide education on how they also did it as a country, and they bring here individuals who are able to teach people, not just people in higher offices, but also people on the grassroots as well, like what you can do for yourself and for your family. And then we start from there, and then we go big. So Germany could do that, and they can also form partnerships with companies that are here. If because I know in Germany, you produce your own panels, you produce your own PVC modules. So we can also do that. German companies who are already in production for the PVC solar modules, they collaborate or they get in partnership with Zambian companies, and then they provide the services, they provide the products at cost or slightly above cost, because most companies, they are more interested in what they get. They're more interested in profits. So if there are people out there who really want to change the world, to make a difference, and they can produce the solar panels, they can produce the PVC modules, and then they can export them to Zambia at cost or slightly above cost, that would be very beneficial.
And Dubai?
So for Dubai, we are all currently waiting. We are anticipating what could be the outcome. But what we hope is that everything that they discuss, they also bring up solutions for us. They bring solutions so that everyone has access to clean energy. Everyone has access to green energy. Like I said before, in Zambia, the government removed import tariffs for electric cars. But currently, we do not have that much infrastructure that supports driving electric cars on our roads. So it's something that we are anticipating that probably for countries like ours, that will be talked about at the conference, and they will find solutions.
And I think when I talk to people from Africa, it's always the question of meeting at equal footing, yeah? And so we could probably have joint ventures in Africa, maybe building supply systems for electric energy, maybe building electric cars in Africa. Yeah, that could be an opportunity. And so we have to be creative, I think. Yeah, and to regard it as a partnership. Yeah. And we have this term I really hate. It's Entwicklungshilfe in Germany. Yeah, this is it's foreign aid, and I think this is really something that we should get rid of. We should go for partnerships.
Okay, we are ready.
Yes. Okay. Thanks a lot, Bridget. Was a very interesting talk we had, and it's always good to have a change in perspective, to see the other part of the world, yeah, because we are all interconnected. Yeah, there is no island on this world. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah. Okay, good.
Okay, we switch to German. 14 Uhr geht's weiter, ne?
Ja, aber auch in Englisch.
In English. Okay.
Okay, alles klar. Thanks a lot, Bridget.
Bye-bye.
Okay. And have a good time in Zambia.